Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you today for the online workshop on design thinking, critical thinking, and innovation design, which is there from 21st to 26th of February 2022. I welcome all the students across all the semesters and faculty members for this workshop. So, for the today's first session, we have a speaker called as Dr. Christina. Let me give a brief introduction about the speaker. Dr. Christina Grace Danny received her BTech degree in Instrumentation and Control from NIT Tiruchirappalli in the year 2009. From 2009 to 2011, she has worked as an instrumentation engineer with MRPL Bangalore, Karnataka. Then she received her MS and PhD degree in Applied Mechanics from IIT Madras, that's Chennai, in the year 2018. Her PhD work was in the area of fiber optic biosensors. Since 2018, she has been working as assistant professor in the Department of Electronics and Instrumentation Engineering, Ramaiah Institute of Technology, Bengaluru. Her research interests include the optical fiber sensing, sensors for biomedical applications, thin film coatings, plasmonics, geometric optics modeling, and SIRS. We welcome all for the today's session, and I'll hand over the uh, content to the speaker. Welcome all.
Thank you, Viva ma'am, for the kind introduction. So let's just jump into the presentation. So I will be giving you an introduction of the workshop today. That's going to be the first session for us. And before we delve into the workshop, I invite Dr. Prabha Ravi ma'am, the head of Entrepreneurship and Development Cell of RIT, to give a brief introduction about the initiatives in our institute. Over to you, Prabha ma'am.
Very good evening to all who have joined as participants for this program and the coordinators. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This workshop on design thinking, critical thinking, and innovation design. This is something which we want to take it as an initiative under the innovation activities of RIT. A bird's eye view on what actually is innovation. There is something called as Global Innovation Index, which ranks the entire country in the world with respect to their innovation that happens in the country. And I'm very proud to say that India is in the 46th position this year, that is 2021 ranking. And in 2020, we were in 48th rank. Going up each rank takes a lot of effort and a lot of activities that need to happen in a country to climb each rank in the global level. So this rank is given by WIPO. And the consistent improvement in the Global Innovation Index ranking in our country is due to the immense knowledge capital, vibrant startup ecosystem, and an amazing work done by the public and private research organizations. We have what is called as Ministry of Education, Government of India has established what is called as MOE Innovation Cell, MIC. Its aim is to systematically foster the culture of innovation amongst the higher educational institutions in our country. Its main goal is to encourage, inspire, and nurture young students by supporting them to work with new ideas and transform them into prototypes while they are in their informative years, especially during their campus life. MIC will also work towards designing ranking system for different institutions and where they are basically working on these innovation initiatives. In this regard, the Ministry of Education Innovation Cell encourages to set up innovation councils in the institutes And I'm very proud to say that at RIT, we have the Institute Innovation Council, which has been established, and various activities have been planned and get conducted over the whole year in the campus. And the activities align along the line of Ministry of Education Innovation Council objectives. Education is not the filling up of a pail, but it is lighting up of a fire. Education is the spark that lights up the mind. I hope you participants enjoy this work. I really hope this workshop kickstarts your creativity and ignite in Christina.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction about the initiatives in the workshop. So let me just move ahead. So I just want you to put in the chat box. So the thing is, this is an online workshop, and most of the speakers whom we contacted regarding this workshop was not really happy about it, because they said workshops like this, especially this topic, is really interesting when you are able to interact with the students. Interaction is limited in an online platform. And I see few of you raising your hands. I'm not sure whether it is for you to unmute and talk, or whether it is by accident. So I would suggest that you type out your doubts or anything in the chat box, and we will look into it, and based on that we will take a call. So any doubts or any issues with the network, or if you have some something to ask, you can always put it in the chat box, and based on your question or your doubt, we will see whether we can push you to the panelists so that you can unmute yourself to talk. Right. So, okay, so I have a very small mathematics problem for you. So let's assume that 1,000 people have registered for this workshop, right? And 1.5 hour sessions each, and there are 11 sessions in total. And let's assume the least, which is like 100 rupee per hour of a person's, let's say 100 rupees value for 1 hour of a person's time. How much do you think is the time value of this workshop? Can you quickly type in the chat? I will repeat the question to you. Let's assume there are actually more than 1,200 participants who have registered for the workshop. But for simplicity's sake, let's assume that 1,000 participants have registered. And let us assume that also every person's every hour is of value 100 rupees. And we have 11 sessions in total, which is each session is 1.5 hours. So can you type in the chat box, what is the time value of this workshop? Okay, I've got answers starting to pop in. Okay, I'm not sure whether that's the right answer. Someone is coming close. The numbers are right, but the number of zeros are wrong. It's not 11 lakh. It's 11 sessions. Each session, which is 1.5 hour. Okay. So you understand, right? So even if you put a person's hour value as just a meager 100 rupees, we are talking in lakhs, right? So it is important that we make this workshop something useful, something beneficial, and not just a waste of time. So coming to the contents, this is briefly what I would want to address in this talk. What is design thinking and what is critical thinking? So before we have the external speakers come in and talk to you, it is good that we understand the basic terminologies that are involved. And why is it important? Like, till last year, if you think about the 175 credit batches or 200 credit batches, they didn't have something as something of a course called design thinking. Why did it have to be introduced to your batch? What is the importance, right? So why is it all important? So that's the second question which we'll be dealing with. And it's always good to know the history. I'm not sure how many of you are interested in history, but history is really fascinating and it gives us so much to base our foundation on and build. And of course, where all is this kind of design thinking and critical thinking relevant? And finally, what you can expect from this workshop. So this is briefly the contents that we'll be going through. But wait a minute. So if I am actually teaching you design thinking and this workshop is about that, shouldn't I first follow that in the lecture which I am giving you, right? So I should have tried to design it effectively. And let's see. This is what I had in mind when I designed this session, right? So I wanted to make this session so that I motivate all of you to attend the workshop and get maximum benefit out of it, right? So that's the goal. And having that goal in mind, I put my content. I wanted to have it relevant, crisp, and broad, so that if there is let's say a term called biotechnology, maybe it might put off others. So I wanted to be like, okay, let's have all the areas put in together, and definitely try to make it as creative, easy to understand as possible. And I mean, as you heard in my profile, I am an instrumentation engineer. And if anything, instrumentation engineers know that open systems are prone to error. Closed systems are definitely better because there is a feedback signal. So I do want to learn from this session as well. So we will have it as an interactive sessions as much as possible, right? We'll have some polls and surveys. We'll try to get some feedback about what you are thinking broadly. And even when you are typing in a chat, sometimes it's difficult because the chat keeps going when so many people are trying to answer. So we'll try to see if we can have a combination of chats as well as polls. So that's the broad introduction for this session, which is a broad introduction for the workshop. So we will begin with the poll question, right? So I have something in mind. So the goal I told you was that I want to motivate you to attend this workshop and get maximum benefit. So for me to understand whether I have achieved the goal, I have to know how much interested you are in the workshop right now and how much interested you are in the workshop at the end of the session. So we're going to have the same two poll questions now. You'll answer it now and you'll answer it at the end of the session. So these are the two questions. How interested are you in attending the workshop? And the second question is, what is your primary motivation for attending? I am sure I was the one who sent you all the mails and I put it very boldly saying it is mandatory for all the first years. So is it because it's mandatory, or is it because there is a CIE component and marks involved, or you're just bored and you want to attend? I want to know what the reasons are, right? So I will put the first poll. I am launching it, right? So yes, so I hope that you guys answer the poll. There are two questions. Once at least 50% of you start answering, I will end the poll. And by the way, the poll is anonymous, so I wouldn't know who is telling what. So don't get scared. You can put what you truly are thinking about. So 240 out of the 500 odd participants have answered. We'll just wait for some 30 seconds more before we close the poll and we try to get the results broadcasted. I'm sure you guys are also curious to know what pool of people that we are having here. Okay, so 70% of you have at least attempted. So I'm going to close the poll because we are limited in time. So let's see. So I've ended the poll and I'm going to share the results. So there are 53% who are interested, 30% somewhat interested, 2% not interested, and 15% extremely interested. And the second question, this is for the benefit of those who are viewing in YouTube who will not be able to see the shared results. For the primary motivation, 20% of you say that it's because it's mandatory, 19% that it's because you wanted a certificate, and 8% because you have some time to spare. Yeah, that's fair. And 53% because you're curious. So it's, I guess, the same 53% who said they are interested. And okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you for participating in this poll. Right. So we'll proceed. So going to the main contents of this session, it's always good to know the definition. So when tomorrow's session onwards, the experts talk about critical thinking and design thinking, you should have some basic understanding of what that is. And I am sure most of you who are in the first semester have already attended your CIE 1 and you would know a broad basics, but this is also for the benefit of other students, higher semester students and the faculty. So design thinking is a non-linear process. And it's non-linear because it's not like schooling where you have to finish kindergarten, then first standard, then second standard and third standard. So once you're going to third standard, you don't have to come back to second standard or first standard, right? So that's a linear process. But design thinking is not like that. So the processes are actually mentioned in the screen. So you have things like empathize, define, ideate. So after you have an idea also, you can go back to empathize and then you can go to prototyping. And then again, you're like, okay, I don't think I've defined the problem correctly. You can go back, right? So it's a non-linear process that takes needs into consideration. So for many of us, it's obvious. It's like, obviously, when you're designing something, needs have to be taken into consideration. But we should remember that it was not always this mindset for the past 100 years, right? So previously there was other constraints, right? So the design might not be user centered. The design might be process centered. So a manufacturer will be like, I don't care what you exactly want. This is what I can manufacture and give. So take it or leave it. Or a business person can come and say, this is the profit I want. If you want, you take it or you leave it, right? So that's a business centric or a process centric process. But design thinking, what we are referring to, is a user centric process. It takes into consideration the needs, the desires, the wants of the user. And it offers a solution or a design using the design process. So it's like the process is articulated because, again, earlier there was this assumption that there is this lone genius, no, that there is this guy who has this curly hair, who's like having an unkempt hair, a nerdy glasses, sitting in a garage and then doing the designing process. But that's like long gone sort of a thinking mindset. Now we know that every one of us can design, but design thinking is also a process that has to be learned. So let's say you go and ask Sachin Tendulkar, how are you the best batsman? How did you do this shot? If he's going to tell you, you know what, it just happened, I know just how to do it, you're not going to learn. As an aspiring cricketer, you might be put off saying like, no, how can I learn then? But if he's going to tell you what he thinks when he looks at a bowler, what he thinks when the ball is released, how he chooses between the different shots, then you also can learn from him and improve. So design thinking process, again, they are formalized in such a manner that anyone who is willing to learn can pick up the skill set and improve. Right? And again, a little bit of history. Earlier, people used to not worry about design. It's like, okay, it works and that's it. I don't care. And then it moved on to stage 2, where they thought, okay, now that I have the functionality there, it's like the cherry on top of the icing. No, you can do all this jigna work, you can put some nice colors. They thought that only was the design. And then later on, they improved to understand that design is a process, right? It's a thinking process. And now it's again, it's full on design Josh, and people are thinking about strategies like, okay, what can I design? What can I offer the user such that I can win over my competitor? Right? So this is a design ladder which was proposed by the Danish Design Center. So now coming to the definition of critical thinking. So critical thinking is, if you can just read it, an intellectually disciplined process of actively. Active is a keyword. It's not something which occurs passively in your mind. You know what you're doing, right? You're actively conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, evaluating information. And how did you get the information? There are different sources in which you can get. You could have done a literature survey, you could have done a market survey, you could have done some experiments and got the experimental output, you could have run a simulation in a computer using a software and got all the results, or you could have spoken to an expert and through that communication you could have got, or you would have just sat and reasoned in your mind. So what do you do with all this variety of information that is available to you, right? So doing it in a proper conceptualizing manner, that is critical thinking, right? And very briefly, if I want to put it across, this is how I have understood. There are slightly different definitions of design thinking proposed by different people. So this is how I take it, right? If there's a problem, a challenge, or an obstacle, how do you approach the problem, right? That is design thinking. And if you have some information at hand, how do you handle all the information at hand? That is critical thinking, right? So that's a brief about this session on definition. Finally, we'll finish with innovation, right? So we've had critical thinking, design thinking, and innovation design. So these are the three key words of the workshop. So let's try to understand innovation also. I am sure with this Venn diagram, you yourself would have understood it. Just to, let's say, take an example, right? So what example can I give you? Okay, let's say I have a desire to fly. Okay, so I might have a desire, but before the Wright brothers came in, there was no airplane, there was no helicopters, no nothing. So there was no technology feasible for that. So though I had a desire, nothing could be done, right? And then it came a time where, you know, you have aeroplanes, but let's say I want to fly alone, like, you know, this Iron Man style. I want to fly. So that's my desire. Is it feasible right now? Maybe a little bit. It's not too clear, but the technology might be there. But then comes the third part. Is it viable? Can someone take it right now to the market? And would you have enough users to pay such exorbitant amount of money to be able to fly? Not sure. So it's not viable right now. So when all these three components come together, that it's desirable and it's feasible and it is viable, then you've got the sweet spot of innovation, right? So this is again a very, very brief overview of innovation and design thinking and critical thinking. Now coming to the second part of our session, right? Okay, why is this important? Like, till last year you guys didn't care about design thinking. Now you introduce in a course, you're having a workshop. What is it all about? Why suddenly might be a question. So I have again few problems in for you to solve. So I will put it as a poll question again. Please don't share your answer in a chat. I would like you to put it in the poll. So this is the question. People have started answering. It's actually interesting to see the answers that people have chosen. I hope you're not putting inky pinky ponky. That's not acceptable, okay? Only 87 have attempted. Okay, I think some issue was there. I request you to kindly, I'm going to relaunch the poll, right? So kindly do it again. I'm going to relaunch. Relaunch will clear off all the existing results. So it's going to come again to you. Kindly fill the. So once at least 50% of the participants fill it, we will share the results. Okay. There seems to be some problem with the poll. But anyway, so we'll just share the results which is there at hand with us. So out of the 28% which participated, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I just hope that the other panelists do not stop any sort of a sharing. Okay, so 35% say it's A, 14% B, 18% C, 22% D, 9% E, and 3% F. So based on popular opinion also, the answer seems to be A, which is the right answer. So I would like, before telling you the answer, the answer is A. So can those who have got the answer as A, put in the chat box how you arrived at the answer. What was the thinking process that told you that A was the answer? Can you try to articulate that? Because we are trying to tell about thinking, design thinking. Can you try to articulate? Okay, pattern. Yes, I'm sorry, someone mentioned that they have not got the poll. There are some technical difficulties, I'm sorry. Pattern, yes, of course. So, good. So this is a problem with respect to inductive reasoning. So you have a number of observations. So the first 5 blocks are basically the observation. And then comes a question, which is and nothing was written, right? I've just given you an image and asked you to give an answer. You knew what the question was, you knew what to do, and you were able to come up with an answer. And inductive reasoning is basically taking a lot of observation and observing the pattern and formulating a general rule to say this is what the next thing could be, right? And in other words, forming a generalization based on what is known and observed, right? So that is design thing, that is in inductive reasoning. So let me give you another question. Again, wait for the poll. This is going to be too easy, but it's just to make a point. So I'm going to launch that poll. I'm hoping that every one of you get this right. Otherwise, you have to go back to school. Yeah, so almost 50% have participated. So I'm gonna end the poll and share the results. Okay, so there are at least 6 plus 4 plus 17 plus 11. So many people who think it is not 30. I think you should go back, take your 11th standard, 12th standard, or even lower textbooks and find what the answer is, right? So let me stop sharing. So 87% of you got it right, which gives me hope. And okay. So what did we do here? How is it deductive reasoning, right? So you might be confused. Oh, this is a math problem. Why do you call it deductive reasoning? Because that's how the process is. So what actually went through your mind in some sense, if we can articulate, was, okay, the sum of all 3 angles of a triangle is 180. And that was the first premise. That's a factual statement. The second statement was that, okay, one of the angles is 90, another angle is 60, right? So that's the second statement. So when these two statements are true, by deductive reasoning, you've come to the conclusion that the x value of x is 30 degree, right? So here it's slightly different, right? So we start from factual statements, which are conclusions, and then reach a specific conclusion. From general conclusions, we go to specific conclusion, right? So again, just for your general knowledge, there's another kind of thinking known as abductive thinking, abductive reasoning, where you have incomplete observation and you make the best prediction, right? So this is broadly about logical reasoning. So now you might be wondering, okay, this is something we know, and this is something which we've always knew that, always known that college or in an aptitude test we are going to have. Why are you talking about this, right? Why? How is it relevant for a design thinking workshop? So I'll tell you what the relevance is, right? So again, just to state, logical reasoning can be a combo of inductive, deductive, and abductive reasoning. So why I brought this up is that everyone in the world, every employer knows that if the employee does not think logically, is not able to logically reason, then their performance will be bad. So that's the reason, whether it is a software company or whether it is an automation company or a mechanical company, any industry that comes to our college, you usually have an aptitude test for placements. Also for competitive exam, whatever field of, there is going to be some amount of aptitude test which is there, because everybody knows there is a general skill set of logical reasoning that a person should have, otherwise they are not employable, right? The same thing goes with HR. Again, I hope you know how placements work. You have an aptitude test, and then you will have a technical test. You will have HR interview, where the panel of interview people are there and they ask you questions like, tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work for this company? So let's say aptitude test and reasoning test, you will be able to study from a book. This, tell me about yourself, which book is going to have that? No book, because you have to introspect yourself. So you realize that there are certain skill sets which are required that an employer tests for you, right? Give a test so that they'll understand whether the candidate can be selected to work for their company or not. So why am I putting all this? Is because, okay, again, to reiterate, communication plus aptitude test, technical test, and HR interview. So that's the process. So coming to why it is relevant for this workshop is, what is the skill set that is required by an employer in the future? What do they expect? Is it the same old logical reasoning and HR skills? Yes, it's very important, but is only that important? No, right? So if you can look into the graph, you can see that physical abilities. So just look at the dark blue color part of it, saying that over the years, the company is requiring more and more of that, right? So you see that physical ability requirement is very less. Only 20% of the companies say that they want physical abilities to be there. But you see that 70% of companies say that critical thinking and analysis is extremely important. So just like they understood logical thinking is important and put it as a aptitude test, which is basic for any employment, soon what is going to happen? They have all realized critical thinking is essential. They will get it into all forms of tests and exams so that they are able to identify which candidate is suitable. So this is from the World Economic Forum PDF of future jobs. It's a survey taken in 2020, right? So these are the skill sets which is required in 2025, right? So you have joined in 2021. You'll be graduating in 2025, and this is what they're going to be looking for. And the top skill that they're looking for is innovation. And critical thinking is the fourth one, and there is some aspect of design coming in the eighth one. So you now understand the relevance of it, I hope, of why we are having these workshops, why we are trying to teach you this at an early stage so that you will be equipped for it in the future. So again, a little bit more of statistics to convince you. The trend in the jobs which include design thinking as a skill set is increasing, right? So this is a little bit old statistics from 2016, 17 and 18, but you see the importance and the trend, right? So it's not going to decrease, it's going to keep on increasing. All the employers are going to ask whether you're able to have design thinking skill set, right? So then the question is, okay, if it's something like I'm not going to be able to study from a book, how am I going to be prepared for such questions in the future, right? So the questions can be, they'll give a scenario and say, what sort of problems do you envisage? And then you tell a problem, they'll be like, why do you think that's a problem? And then they'll be like, okay, how did you notice that that's a problem? And they can ask you different sort of questions about what design means to you, what you enjoy in design, and they'll ask you about your project. So most of the answers, what you have to do is you have to give examples saying, yes sir, I actually did this project in my first year and we hit an obstacle and this is how we thought and came up with a solution. So you cannot give a memorized answer. Nobody's going to take that. Nobody's going to be impressed with that. So you have to give life examples from what you've done. Right? So if you should have done it by the 4th year, you should start doing it early. And that's why we wanted to introduce this course at the very beginning of your engineering. And again, a little bit about critical thinking also. Describe one of the most difficult decisions you have had to make at work, right? So if that's going to be, so the most difficult decision was whether to bunk this class and go for a movie or attend the class. If that's going to be the most difficult decisions you've made in life, I don't think you're employable again, right? So only when you work in projects, only when you have done your hard work and you have hit some roadblocks and you actually successfully crossed over, you would be able to tell them like left, right, center. You will give all examples and they'll be truly impressed with you. And again, so let's have a small poll time again. So this is regarding whether you think design thinking and critical thinking are important. So it's just a small poll. 2 questions. Answer it quickly, please. Okay. So again, there are some issues, technical difficulties. I'm sorry. So let me share with whoever have some around 38% have participated. So I'm happy to see that 75% of you actually agree completely that it's very important. And yes, if you get some questions, would you be able to attempt? I'm glad that you think you're able to attempt. So equip yourself more, do more projects. You'll be able to have much more confidence in citing more examples from your life. Right. So let's proceed. Okay. So this is going to be a very short history time. So it's always good to know how people thought so that you don't have to go back, do the same exercise all over again, right? They say you don't have to go back, invent the wheel. The wheel is already invented. So if you can do some innovations in the wheel, yes, but you need to know what process has already been done, what failures they have faced, why did they do that? So very briefly on why this whole thing became a subject in itself, right? So it became popular kind of in 1940, 1950s with books and thinking process such as productive thinking, creative engineering, systematic method for designers, and so on. And there the area of focus was, let's say, design thinking for different varieties, maybe novel functionality, higher performance. So when I mean functionality, so let's say you're writing a code in C programming language. If I'm giving you a problem and if you're able to write a code to solve that problem, the functionality is achieved, right? So that is one layer. Another layer is someone might have done what? Someone would have been able to run the code in 5 seconds, but someone else's code would have taken 1 minute, right? So are you able to optimize the performance? Are you able to get higher performance? So that would be a second layer. And then the third one would be, so let's say for hardware things, can you reduce the production cost? and for increased salability, right? So these are some areas that they looked at in 1940, 1950. And in 1960s, we have this person called Buckminster Fuller. He was like, okay, this looks all vague, all this, okay, design and only the geniuses can do. So let me use scientific methodology and bring in rationalism and not say that, okay, only elite few people can think and rest of us, only those prodigies can think, rest of us are just normal, boring dumbos. Let's not have it like that. Let's train everyone to be able to think better and think using design thinking concepts. So he was the first one who brought in some sort of a scientific methodology to it. And then Horst Rittel introduced something called as a wicked problem, right? So what is a wicked problem? It's some problem which is highly complex and multidimensional, right? So let's say sometimes you might be like, okay, why all this complicated thinking for something simple? You don't have to use a complicated thinking for something simple, but there are complex problems where multiple things have to be optimized. In those areas, you definitely need design thinking. So that was his idea, and this was in 1960s. And 1970s, a Nobel Prize laureate Herbert Simon came, and I'm sure this is going to be interesting for those who have taken artificial intelligence, right? So what is artificial intelligence? So how did they think of it? How did they even come up with that idea? So okay, I can build a robot which can do this, right? Do this arm movement. But can I teach the robot how to think in some sense, to know when it should do the movement and when it should not do the movement? Not just hard code all of it, but give it some aspect of an artificial intelligence for it to be able to imitate what a human would have done in a similar scenario. For that sort of a process to happen, first of all, you need to understand how humans think, right? Only then you will be able to make a robot imitate that. So that kind of an aspect and work was done by Herbert Simon. Then visual thinking, I'm sure all of you know, left brain is a particular kind of a thinking style, right brain is another kind of a thinking style. And Robert McKim said that a combination of both is required for holistic problem solving. And Peter Rowe, again an important person in this field, he published a book on design thinking. His was to do more on architectural design. And IDEO, I'm sure all the first years in Ramaiah College know, because the book we follow relies heavily on IDEO sort of strategies. So this was a result of a formulation by Stanford Design School, and they implemented it and got several wonderful designs coming based on that theme. So they are now teaching it to several people. So the last last thing which I want to stress in history is that the school is, again, the Stanford School of Design is again now pioneer in this area, trying to articulate the process of design and teach the entire world about it. The other schools are MIT D Lab, Texas Austin labs are there, and Berkeley also has a lab, innovation lab, right? So now coming to a little bit more fun part, right? So I'm sure by now you might be a little bored of hearing my voice. So let us see some videos, some video clips. So again, the question is, where is this relevant? So this design thinking, is it only relevant to a particular field? So if it's only going to be, so someone will be like, I'm only going to do a software job. Why do I need design thinking? I'm not going to design anything. So why do I have to do? Or else someone might be a cricketer and says like, I am not even going to work in a corporate. Why are you talking to me about design? Or teachers are there like, okay, what does a faculty have to do with design? So where all is it relevant? Short, simple answer, it's relevant everywhere. But let's just look at few examples of interesting examples, right? Security. Security is very, very important for a country. And any idea, before I put it in the screen, any idea how much money has been allotted in the budget, in the current budget for defense? Anyone? GK freaks over here? You can put in the chat box. 700 crore. Only that? 15? 500 crores? 60 billion US dollars. 500 to 40 crores. Okay. So I'm not sure if this is the final number, but in one of the websites, this is what I got. 4,05,470 crores, right? This is, I think, without the defense pensions, but it's a huge amount, right? It's a huge amount. And one of the main reasons I think is that we have to kind of import a lot of equipment from foreign countries. And so the government is thinking, okay, why can't we innovate, right? So innovations are required and R&D is required in our country for our country's security, right? So let's just look at a small example from another country which has been very innovative in the past. I'm sure some of you at least would have known about the Israel's Iron Dome. So let's try to understand about it.
Coverage of the ongoing conflict in Israel has featured recurring images like this: missiles streaming across the sky and exploding midair. These are missiles from Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system, a land-based system that intercepts and destroys short-range rockets and mortars. It has become a bedrock of the country's defense since its introduction in 2011. And in the current round of hostilities, Israel's military said the system has intercepted more than 200 of the more than 1,000 rockets fired towards Israel as of May 12th. Here's how the complex detection and interception system works. The system is powered by missile defense batteries, each containing 3 main components. These batteries can defend across short-range rocket and mortar attacks within almost 45 miles of the battery. They are also mobile, so they can be moved to where they are needed. First, a radar unit detects an incoming rocket and relays information about its speed and trajectory to the battery's control center. The control center's computers calculate if the rocket is going to hit populated areas. If it is, a missile is fired from the launcher. Each launcher contains 20 interceptor missiles. Each receives constant guidance updates from the control center and its internal radar. The missile destroys the incoming rocket by exploding near it. The goal is to do this far away from populated areas, minimizing damage on the ground. The defense system has intercepted over 2,400 rockets bound for civilian areas since its launch in 2011, according to an Israeli military spokesperson. During a conflict in 2012, the Iron Dome knocked down 421 rockets launched from Gaza and bound for Israeli cities before a November ceasefire. Coverage of the ongoing conflict in
Right, so that's about security, right? So now let's try to understand from the field of medicine, right? So the problem statement is this: malaria is still a huge problem in a lot of countries, lot of developing countries, including ours. And one of the issues even we faced during COVID, right? So we understood that diagnosis is not happening at the rate at which we want. So during the peak of the second wave, at least when India was hit quite badly, when a person gave their sample for testing, it took quite a while for the results to come in. And we also saw that in terms of right now we can have what is called as home test, right? Rapid antigen test, which is available. But can slum people pay such amount of money and use it? It's still a no. So this was the problem that one of the Indians called Manu Prakash took. And let's try to see what he did with it. And then we'll come back to analyze how his thinking worked, what all can we learn from him. So let's say this is the video.
Just for malaria itself, there are 1 million deaths a year and more than 1 billion people that need to be tested because they are at risk for different species of malarial infections. Now, it's actually very simple to put a face to many of these monsters. You take a stain, like acridine orange or a fluorescent stain or GIMSA, and a microscope, and you look at them. They all have faces. Why is that so? That Alex in Kenya, Fatima in Bangladesh, Navjot in Mumbai, and Julie and Mary in Uganda still wait months to be able to diagnose why they are sick. And that's primarily because of scalability of this diagnostics is completely out of reach. And remember that number, 1 billion. The problem lies with the microscope itself. Even though the pinnacle of modern science, research microscopes are not designed for field testing, neither were they first designed for diagnostics at all. They're heavy, bulky, really hard to maintain, and cost a lot of money. This picture is Mahatma Gandhi in the 40s using the exact same setup that we actually use today for diagnosing TB in his ashram in Sevagram in India. Two of my students, Jim and James, traveled around India and Thailand, starting to think about this problem a lot. We saw all kinds of donated equipment. We saw fungus growing on microscope lenses, and we saw people who had a functional microscope but just didn't know how to even turn it on. What grew out of that work and that trip was actually the idea of what we call foldscopes. So what is a foldscope? A foldscope is a completely functional microscope, a platform for fluorescence, bright field, polarization, projection, all kinds of advanced microscopy built purely by folding paper. It starts with a single sheet of paper. What you see here is all the possible components to build a functional bright field and fluorescence microscope. So there are three stages. There is the optical stage, the illumination stage, and the mask holding stage. And there are micro-optics at the bottom that's actually embedded in the paper itself. What you do is you take it on, and just like you were playing like a toy, which it is, I tab it off, and I break it off. This paper has no instructions and no languages. There is a code, a color code embedded that tells you exactly how to fold that specific microscope. Here is a sheet of paper. This is when we were thinking about the idea. This is an A4 sheet of paper. These are the three stages that you actually see. And the optical components, if you look at the inset up on the right, we had to figure out a way to manufacture lenses in paper itself at really high throughputs. So it uses a process of self-assembly and surface tension to build achromatic lenses in the paper itself. So that's where the lenses go. There are some light sources. And essentially, in the end, all the parts line up because of origami. Because of the fact that origami allows this sub-micron scale precision of optical alignment. So even though this looks like a simple toy, the aspects of engineering that go in something like this are fairly sophisticated. When it's done, it looks something like this. Has all the functionalities of a standard microscope, just like an XY stage, a place where a sample slide could go, for example, right here. We didn't want to change this because this is the standard that's been optimized for over the years, and many health workers are actually used to this. So this is what changes, but the standard stains all remain the same for many different diseases. You pop this in. There is an XY stage, and then there is a focusing stage, which is a flexure mechanism that's built in paper itself that allows us to move and focus the lenses by micron steps. So what's really interesting about this object, and my students hate when I do this, but I'm going to do this anyway, is these are rugged devices. I can turn it on and throw it on the floor and really try to stomp on it. And they last, even though they're designed from a very flexible material like paper.
So let me very briefly explain again what he did. He's Manu Prakash. He's working with developing something called as a fold scope. So fold scope is, I hope you know, origami, right? So you take a paper, you do different folds, and then you'll make a particular shape. So this one, if you do a particular kind of a fold, it will result in a microscope. So as he explained, the construction process definitely has a lot of sophistication, including, let's say, manufacturing of a particular kind of a lens, which is difficult to manufacture in some flexible material like paper. The optics, the entirety of it is definitely having sophistication. But at the end, it can just go to any person, any nurse in a developing country, and she or he can fold the microscope, get a usable microscope, which is much more, simple, much more portable, much more low cost, right? So he understood that what solution he has to build, the existing microscopes are bulky and expensive. So it is not just about money. So let's say from, Western countries, you can get a lot of funding and get huge microscopes to places like Uganda. But would people be able to view it? Would people be able to maintain and, use it? That's again a question. So you have to make it accessible for everyone. And the second interesting thing is that the students went for field visits. So they went to the grassroots of the problem, right? So they understood what the issue was, and then they proposed this fold scope, little tiny details, right? So, okay, it's having to go to Uganda and to Bangladesh. So it cannot be having multiple, instruction manuals in multiple languages. So he just color coded it, very simple. And also the fact that he didn't change the glass slide. Glass slide was still the same. Why? Because if he has to change that, someone has to teach that, and the whole logistics of it becomes different, right? And of course, it's a robust design. So there is definitely so many open problems there in the field of medicines, and I really call upon all of you who are interested in designing to design and think of solutions which are viable, which are useful for Indian population. Right? So then we'll move on to
Just for malaria.
the next one. So in the field of entertainment, right? So it's not just always serious things like security and medicine, but even in the field of entertainment. And so I have a question. So I see that the chat box has been quite silent for a while. So let me ask this question. Who is the hero of Bahubali? Who is the hero of Bahubali? Okay, so many. Good. But I actually beg to differ. I don't think it's Prabhas. I think it's the graphic designer. He is the true hero of most of these, superhero movies which come across, right? So what kind of instrumentation or what kind of design thinking goes through in movies like this? There's computer generated imagery. So the beautiful waterfalls you see in the movie has so much of design thinking gone on in the background. That is animatronics in the film, LiDAR, right? So instrumentation students are going to be learning about LiDAR, and LiDAR scanning type of the most advanced technique is used in the films like this, right? So again, so we will check out one video where we are able to see what really happens and how they make it into the movie like Bahubali. I'm sure few of you would have seen that. Let's watch that. Before that, I have another interesting thing, right? So there was a company called Rising Telecable, right? So cable, I'm not sure if you guys in this generation know about it, but in the previous generation, people would know, right? So cable, when someone is offering cable, you have to pay the money and get their services. But there are people who kind of steal it. They'll try to steal the signals from these companies. So what this Razin Telecable did was, during one of the sessions, one of their TV thing, they ran phone numbers saying, call this number to get a free t-shirt. And so many of them were excited and they called and it's like, I'm calling this number to get a free t-shirt. And they're like, I know. Because only those who are stealing the signal would be able to get that message. The proper users would not get that message. So they identified who stole and who got the signal properly by a very simple tactics like this. So let's just try to again, so in the entertainment industry also, there's so much of design thinking which is involved. We'll see a small video about Bahubali now. not in detail, but very briefly. Even politics, you can have design thinking, right? So this is not the kind of design thinking which involves empathize, define, and so on. But Charlie Chaplin had this knack of, making a satire on Hitler, which was beautiful, which we people see generations after he's passed away, right? So there is design thinking in almost all areas. So, okay. So in the field of art, so again, so some questions. So who is your favorite musician in music industry? Which music director is your favorite? Type in chat. A.R. Rahman is the first answer, so we'll take that because that's what I've prepared for. And okay, so I'm going to play a small clip by A.R. Rahman. So you guys need to identify what movie it's from. You guys need to tell me what was the original instrument which was used. And I also want to know if any one of you know what instrument Rahman is playing in the video clip that I'm showing, right? So let's go. Right, so these are the three questions. Guess the movie tune, guess what instrument the original movie clip was played with, and then what is Rahman playing with, right? So yeah, so you guys got it right. The movie was Bombay, and the original movie was the tune was played with a flute. But this is not a keyboard. This is also not a synthesizer. This is an instrument called as Haken Continuum, right? So in a keyboard, if you have seen a keyboard, the notes are discrete, right? So you cannot go from one note to another sliding like, like let's say you would do in a veena or in a guitar. So this is a very different kind of an instrument. Again, as a result of a design thinking process that came into being, where you can actually slide between notes, and you can, the way in which you're pressing. So in a keyboard, once you press it, it doesn't matter whether you're shaking or not shaking, it's not going to make a difference. But in an instrument like this, when you're pressing, it matters. When you're shaking, it matters. The amount of force you're going to give matters. Any idea what would be the working principle of this instrument? If you can put it in a chat. How do you think this instrument's going to work? Vibration. I think that's what the person meant. Anything else? What is it sensing? Yeah, sensor, of course. What sort of sensor? Pressure, yes, right. So you have a mesh of pressure sensor, and based on how much you're giving pressure, where you're giving pressure, what are you doing with your finger movement, you will be able to generate a beautiful sound which is kind of very close to the original flute, right? So the next one. Again, this is something, a video which I saw, which was very inspiring to me. Environment wise, we see that there is a lot of land pollution, there's plastic waste, there's a lot of air pollution, smoke, greenhouse gases, there's also water pollution of all kind, and e-waste accumulation. And if you look into the internet, there's literature review of thousands of methods in which each one will be like, okay, you do this, you will solve the problem of the entire world. But still problem exists. Why? Why has it not been solved? There are so many ideas. Ideas in the air don't generate anything. You need to take those ideas and implement them. So I'm really excited to show you the next person. She had an idea. The idea might not have been too out of the box, but she took the idea, persevered till the very end to get a usable product. That's what is needed from all of us. That's what I want from all of you, that you don't just talk about ideas in random. You do the literature survey, you make it into a report, you make prototypes out of it, and you work till the very end so that you can have your plan implemented. Right? So let's see.
Hi everyone. Can you guess what this is made of? No? Or this? No? I'll tell you. It's made of this. Our plastic waste. Plastic grocery bags. Or these glittery gift wrappers. This is what we wrap our gifts in, right? We use it once and then just throw it away. Or it's made of all these multi-layered wrappers, which again our food comes in, or other articles that we use in our home comes in, and we just use it once and thrown away. That's what we do at Recharkha. We upcycle all this plastic waste into all these gorgeous products that we see right behind me, with all our single-use plastic waste. What we do is, it's not just a recycling or upcycling process. It is also where we are trying to provide livelihoods for the tribals and needy people in remote rural areas of India. And that's why Recharkha, the eco-social tribe, was born. 1, to conserve the environment, and 2, to create livelihoods. How do we do this? We collect plastic waste in the cities like Pune and Mumbai and Silvassa. We gather all that plastic waste, we wash and sanitize it. We then take it to our remote village where the fabric making process happens. Here, we use just a pair of scissors and we manually cut each and every plastic bag or each and every wrapper just using these scissors. After that, we use a traditional charkha. That's what we call it in India. The English name is spindle. So we use a spindle and a hand loom to weave it and convert it into a fabric. Now this entire process is manual because we had decided to create livelihoods. Hence, we kept the process manual. Once that happens, once the fabric is created, we then take it to our workshop, which is located here in Pune, and we convert them into various products that you can see here. Now, why are we doing this? Most of the plastic waste, which we are typically using today, is very low quality of plastic, and it's one-time use and throw. So that is why whenever you are traveling around, you end up seeing all this waste, right? So this waste is there because it is of no value. Waste such as bottles and containers does get recycled, but low value plastic waste like the ones that we use is not recyclable, and hence it is just thrown away. And hence you see all of this garbage lying here and there on nooks and corners of the city or remotest villages or remotest mountaintops. Hi everyone.
So I see that some of you think that they've gone to tribal places for cheap labor. I don't know. I cannot comment on their sort of employment without knowing the details. But I found the idea that she took an idea, she persevered to the extent of having a business is what is lacking in most of us. And finally, about food industry, right? So food industry also, there's a lot of growing demand, and they did cater to the demand, but at what cost, right? So profit at what cost? Design thinking at what compromise, right? So there's so much of animal cruelty which is happening. There's also hormone injections in all this chicken and all those animals, such that it's even dangerous for human consumption, right? So design thinking is not just to maximize profit, not just to reach one single objective, have a multiple objective, right? So have profit also in mind, yes, but functionality, sustainability, environment consciousness, all of it put together, and you can get the best of results, right? So I will share this presentation in the Google Drive. So those who are interested can look into the whole videos. These are clips from bigger videos where you will be able to get more information, right? So again, we have a small poll time. So what I would like to ask now is, what is your heart burdened on? Where do you want to focus your life's goal? Where do you want to impact the society, right? So which is your area of interest? In which of the following fields are you interested to apply design thinking? So you can choose any one of them. So let's just try to understand where as a group we are, what are all our interests. Yeah, I should have given multiple choice, but the first most interesting thing. So you can at least do that. So we have almost 50% participation. So let's just, I'm going to close now. So in 5 seconds. Okay. I'll end the poll now here. So you see the results, 23% want to work in security. I'm glad the defense of our country is going to have really creative engineers working for innovation and 11% in medicine. I really hope more of you join there. 14% in entertainment, good. 10% politics, 8% art, 18% environment, really nice. 4% food industry, 5% fashion, and 8% teaching. So thank you for your filling the poll. We are almost at the fag end of our session. Right. So apart from the idea that it's design thinking is there in all these fields of study, we can also learn several aspects from them. Like, for example, from Iron Dome, we can learn that you have to keep improving your accuracy and precision, right? So you don't stagnate when you're talking about innovation and design thinking. Fold scope. The first thing they did was they got to the grassroots of the problem. They identified what exactly is the problem and gave a relevant solution to it. Telecable strategy, that was a very creative thinking. Charlie Chaplin's satire. Be bold, creative, and even beautiful during protest. And A.R. Rahman's Hacken Continuum, innovate to fill the gap. The person who has that recharka is Amita Deshpande. So persevere to implement your plan. And from food industry's animal cruelty, we learned that profit should not be the sole objective of our design thinking process. Right? So that leaves us to the last question: what to expect from this workshop? Right? So this is the last slide. We have academic experts coming in, experts who are able to articulate and teach how you can have design thinking and how you can do innovation and critical thinking, creativity, with examples and what they have done earlier with such training programs. So we have academic experts. Even one of them is from an alumni of the one of the best design institute of our country, right? And we have entrepreneurs talking about their journey. And I hope you have seen the schedule. Just like many of you, a person from our own college, an undergraduate who did BTech just like you guys, and after finishing BTech started his own company, started his own startup. That person also will come and talk about their journey and how they had the idea, what are the next steps that you can take. We have people from industry talking about what industry would require, let's say, in terms of how you can equip yourself for that. And we kind of made sure that there's a broad area. It doesn't focus only on, let's say, automation or only on digital technologies, but it has medicine, civil, and several different areas, so that students from all groups will be able to relate also and learn better. And this is what we have to offer. And I'm sure that, I hope that from this session at least you guys learned something, few new points. And I'm sure with the rest of the workshop there's so much to learn. If you are going to be focused and attentive, you can definitely learn and benefit from this workshop. And with that, I wish you all the best for this journey, and I hope that you take your time to be able to attend this workshop effectively. So the last poll for the day, as I promised in the beginning, I want to know if at least I have motivated few more souls who were not interested to say that, okay, there's something about it. I am actually having to sit through the session. Let me make it effective. So have I even at least attempted that? So we will see with the last poll interest level at the end of the session. So that would be the last poll for today. And after I close this poll, I will ask my colleague to share the Google form after I close the poll. So the Google form will be shared every day. So you have to fill the form for attendance, and it also has questions for assessment. So the Google Forms link will be put in the chat box in the Zoom as well as in the YouTube, right? So I hope that people only when the participants list gets full here in Zoom, you can go watch YouTube. Otherwise, I really wish that you can come here to Zoom so that our interactions would be better. Okay, so just few more seconds and I will close the poll. Those of you have not filled in, I request you to fill 61%. So our initial poll was 70%. So I'm gonna wait till 70% to end the poll. So after that, I'll give you few instructions for the rest of the workshop, and then we'll wind up with that, and we'll have our question answer session. And whoever wants to stay back can stay back and ask, and whoever wants to leave can leave after that. So we are at 65%. You can see that the Google form has been shared in the Zoom chat box. Hasn't come yet. I'll ask my colleague to share again. Okay. Just wait for a minute. We'll share. Don't worry. Wait for a minute. Okay. So 70% has come. Let me share the results. Okay. So we had 2% who was uninterested earlier, the same 2%. Somewhat interested was initially 30%, now it's down to 19%. Interested was 53%, it's up to 57%. And extremely interested was 15%, it's increased to 23%. And for the second question, because it is mandatory, 20% said that, now it's down to 13. Because I want a certificate, 19% said that, now it's 11. And because I have some time to spare, it's increased from 8 to 10. And because I'm curious, it was 53% earlier, now 67%. Thank you, all of you. That's the best feedback I could get from the session. So I'll stop sharing the poll, and I hope in the chat box, yes, the form is there. So you can fill the form. The form will be open till the end of day. So right now, I thank you for your participation and attention. Every day you will have 2 sessions. Tomorrow's session will be at 11:30, not at 11 because the speaker is unavailable. The tomorrow's session alone will be at 11:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon, right? Tomorrow's session is at 11:30 and 3:30. The subsequent days, it will start again at 11. Each day you're going to have a Google form, and there will be marks for the questions which you're going to attempt there, right? 11:30 to 12:45, right? 1 hour, 15 minutes. So any other questions? So with that, because the form is there, I officially end the session for those who want to leave. So for those who want to stay back and ask questions, any general questions? So, okay. I will send it again to everyone, the link. I hope you are able to access it. If you are not, you can definitely ask us. So those who want to leave can leave now. The rest of you who want to ask questions can stay back. What is the duration for which the form is open? Till at least 1 hour. I don't want you guys to discuss the answers and write, but we leave it for first day for 6 o'clock. Okay, so 6 o'clock is the deadline. Till 6, yes. Today 6 p.m. we will close the form, so kindly fill before that. Thank you. So someone asked whether I can explain fold scope. I had explained it. If you want me to explain again, you can. And now if you want anyone to raise your hands, you can raise your hands. So this is time for questions. Thank you. Thank you for your active and lively participation. Okay.
It was a nice session, Christina. It
Thank
was
you.
good. Yeah. I hope the students have the same momentum and enthu and continue for the next 5 days to follow.
Yes, I hope the same too. So if any one of you have any questions to ask, you can ask. So thank you. Thank you for your remarks. So someone had raised the hands. I will lower it. If you want, you can raise it up again. So you can either raise your hands and I will give you the chance to unmute, or you can type in your questions, or you can leave. So we'll also check whether there are any questions in, okay. Form link is there in YouTube also now. I have sent, ma'am. Anything else? Okay. How to find a mentor? Few mentor I had meeting, but they are charging a bit amount of money, which, okay. So if you can raise your hand, I'll be able to unmute you and understand your question better. Can you? So Shashank, if you can raise your hands, I'll give you the option to unmute. Okay, you're in a noisy area, right? So let's say it is a technical project. So you can try to find a mentor in the same college. You can try to see if the website has the everybody's, all the faculties expertise. So you can definitely go through that, and not just in our college. There's IISc nearby, there are IITs, right? So you can check out the expertise and then write to the faculty or meet the faculty, ask for time and meet the faculty with your idea, right? So always when you're going and meeting a faculty, don't just think that you can talk it. If you are from the first semester, you would know, show don't tell, that's the attitude, right? So we'll have to have you should have a written write-up with, let's say, some block diagram or very briefly about the problem statement, and ask if the faculty is willing to mentor. So that's a brief answer about finding a mentor. I would suggest not to go for mentors who are charging. If, I mean, the last case scenario, you can try that, but otherwise prefer those who can actually spend time with you. Want to know the scope of design thinking in IT, right? So it might be an anecdote, but in IIT, one of my friend was from the aerospace engineering department, right? So he was selected for some sort of an IT company. And after being selected, he actually went and asked the boss, like, why did you select me when there's like really intelligent computer science people also there? He said, we have selected from them also, but they have been taught in a particular manner. So during the interview process and the assignments that they gave, they realized that those people had a very sort of a bookish, a very in the box sort of an idea, whereas this person had a very out of the box idea. So he said that a combination will always be good in a team. That's why they take IT people, take people from mechanical, chemical, electronics, electrical, all the departments they're able to take, because if your thinking process is really innovative, it'll, and innovative, and you are able to design it, it's good. For any field, it is good. You'll be able to give a very different perspective. How to think about any design like a designer. So yeah, that's the most important question, and that's what we expect to teach you and train you in the coming week, right? So that's what the experts from the panel, the experts from academy and industry and entrepreneurs will come and teach you of how they thought, or from people in academics will try to train you also how to think like a designer. Any other questions? I'm glad that 260 people are staying. Either they are staying or they have forgotten to switch off their Zoom. Anyway, so let me just quickly see if YouTube has any question. I don't think anyone in YouTube have a question. So that's it for today. Thank you for coming. See you tomorrow at 11:30.
Thank you. Christina, you'll be online for 2 minutes.